Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
From sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Recover You.
Hi. I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas.
Yes, we hope you had a great holiday week and have been enjoying whatever festivities you've been up to. Mm-hmm. And Happy New Year almost.
Almost. 5.
Yes, if you're listening to the, yes, it's not midnight yet.
Oh.
If you're listening to this on the 31st, Happy New Year's Eve.
Happy New Year.
Mm-hmm.
Eves. Eves. New Year's Eve.
All right. Okay. So this is such a natural thing at the end of the year that we just tend to think about what's next. Mm-hmm. What are our next steps? Who do we want to be? What are our goals? It just, whether we are someone who subscribes to the idea of New Year's resolutions or not, I think everyone gets to December, they start thinking about the next year and they start having words pop into their mind or reflect on the past year and think, well, you know, what did I want to do this year, or what happened this year? What do I want to do next year? Right? It's just sort of a natural, it just comes up. It comes up in our psyche. It comes up in our conversations. It comes up in our mind. It's just such a natural turning point, end of year, new year, to think about these things. And I think the same is true when it comes to our recovery journeys, when it comes to betrayal and addiction and relationship reconciliation. You know, if you are 6 months in, or if you are 6 years in, it's always a good place to kind of reflect and go, what did I like about this past year? What do I like about where we are? What do I not like about where we are? And where do we want to go? And you've heard Patrick talk a lot about creating a vision. And we mention the idea over and over and over and over because we really believe that in order to get somewhere, you have to have an idea of where you're going, right? If we want to actually make forward progress that makes sense, we have to have an idea of where we're going. Because if I was to leave the development and have no plan, I could take 3 left turns and end up in a square, exactly coming back exactly where I started from. 4 left turns. He's counting. I could go around in a circle and end up where I wanted, didn't want to be, right where I started, right? As opposed to if I said, I'm going to put my map in, or I'm going to go to the grocery store, or I'm going to go here, it's clear, right? And so as a betrayed partner, it's so important to know, where is it that I want to go as a recovering addict. It's important to have a vision of who you want to be. And I think as humans, it's a good idea to just take a minute and go, where am I in my life? And who is it that I want to be moving forward? So we're going to just kind of talk a little bit about creating a vision today and share some thoughts, some suggestions. And there's probably as many people are in the world, there's probably just as many ways to do this. So we're just going to give you some thoughts and some suggestions, and you can take it and run.
So the first thing I want to say before we get into some more detailed stuff is you have to make it visible. If you write a vision and put it in a book and put it on your shelf, and you're not constantly coming in contact with it, then you're probably going to forget about it. So it's important that you maybe put it up on your mirror, your vanity mirror, that you either type it up and it's on your home screen on your phone. So it's always front and center for you as you kind of move through that. Or maybe you do write it and put it away, but you have a note in your phone that says, hey, read your vision, right? And so
and Patrick's done this in a variety of ways in terms of like what's out visible. Like one year you had a word, and so there was like an intention behind the word that really resonated with you. What was it? Do you remember?
Recovery.
Was it? No, it wasn't recovery. It was the little Yoda word. Was it recovery? Maybe it was recovery. But anyway, it was something, it was years ago. It was like 3 or 4 years ago.
Still up there too. It's not in my signature anymore.
It's not in your brain anymore. Yeah. Anyway, so you've done it with one word. That was like the intention for that year. You have had a vision that is as short as a sentence, which is you've shared a lot in previous episodes, that is just one sentence that says, I want to be a safe person. Safe for me, safe for others, safe for yourself, honestly. But so that's one sentence, right? That's a vision. And then you've also had different visions throughout the course of our relationship for our relationship as well. And so you found you found two things recently that were really interesting.
Yeah.
So can you maybe talk about those so we can get a little more specific in terms of an example of what some of this looks like in terms of, hey, I thought about this at one point, I really got specific about it, and then I looked back later and found out I had accomplished these things.
Yeah. So the two things you're talking about, there was a poem I wrote for you called A Dream, and it was probably within the first 6 months. And as I actually did the whole send it to Etsy and have it printed out. And I know I gave it to you at some point.
I think it was a Christmas gift.
Yeah. And you were like, thank you. You know what I mean? Because we were still so early in recovery. But what was interesting is we didn't throw it away. It's still here in the house. And the other day I was walking around and I was like, oh my gosh. And I took it out and I started reading it.
Yeah.
And it's called A Dream. And do you want me to read the whole thing?
You can read a couple, just maybe a couple things.
So here's a couple things that were on this. And keep in mind, I didn't know how our relationship was going to work out. I didn't know whether you were going to kick me out of the house. I didn't know any of that stuff. But I was writing this because I was like, this hopefully will help us move forward, namely me. So a couple things on here where I dream of them. And it was funny because when I read this back to you, I was like, did this happen? Mm-hmm. Did this happen as we went through it? And I think everything happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
10 out of 10.
One was I dream of a marriage where you're free of anxiety and blanketed with transparent love. And I think that's anxiety surrounding what had happened here. So that was one of them. I dream of a marriage where you're treated like a true best friend with honesty. I dream of a marriage where being together doing nothing seems perfect. I dream of a marriage where the future is exciting.
Gosh, that one took a little while to get to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I dream of a marriage where we are soulmates and our whole life's actions pursue that end.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was like, I was in despair, but I was really trying to go deep on this. And so that was one of them. The other one was I found a piece of paper. I have this little box that I take to men's groups that has spare journals and all this stuff, but I was cleaning it out and I found a piece of paper in there that I don't even remember writing it. Mm-hmm. And I've had that box now for probably 3.5 years. So I must have written it at some point, but it had all of this information on it about what I wanted things to be. And, one of them was about, I was like, I'm going to be very romantic and all of these different things. And that was back when we were really struggling in the intimacy, side of things. And so as I've read through both of these things, and even my 10-year letter for that matter, that I wrote probably week 5 after recovery, I sit there and I go, wow, this stuff is true. Oh, actually, the one thing from the piece of paper that I wrote was I wanted to be an incredible ambassador for the sex addiction community. Was something that it was like, who would write that? But and it really hit me because I'm speaking at the Southwest Ohio Human Trafficking Conference on the topic of pornography and addiction, and I was like, oh my gosh, so it's just interesting that these things have kind of have come full circle over 5 years, and when I wrote them down, I had no idea that what would happen. So
yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, no, it is very cool. It's kind of like, holy crap.
I know it really is. But that's, we want to share that because you might be really early on in your journey, or maybe you're a year or 2 or 3 years. Maybe you're coming up on 5 like us. Wherever you are, it's always good to reassess. There were so many times where I had an end goal idea of where I wanted to end up relationally, and we had moved so far towards that, but we're still so far away from it. Mm-hmm. And so we had to keep communicating through that whole process over and over and over again, like what was working, what wasn't working, how I was feeling, how, all of these different things over the course of years. And so to get to the place where a lot of it clicks is really nice. And to look back and go, hey, like most of the things that we set out to do in terms of recovery, we've done. And that's really exciting. And so we want to share that because it is really important that we are clear that we are intentional with those goals, because that makes it so much more likely to actually happen. And it's really only when we're clear about the outcome that we can actually become clear on what the obstacles are to getting there. So a lot of times when I'm talking to my clients about having a vision, having a goal in their life, their relationship, holding boundaries, setting high standards, those sorts of things, we need to kind of get really clear on that so that we can see what's getting in the way. And, that's a little bit of the idea of a boundary too, right? I set a really clear boundary because I know that it is encompassing what I need to feel safe and to move towards health in my life. And then that shows me if there's going to be obstacles, for example, relationally, like, are you going to respect that boundary or not? And so, a lot of this plays into getting really clear on what does health look like? What is it that I am working towards? And then through that process, you determine, I have this fear, or I have this insecurity, or I have this wound, all these things that we need to address, or my boundaries aren't being respected, or, we struggle to communicate, or whatever the obstacle is that's keeping you, now that where you want to go is really, really clear, and you can see that dot on the map, all of a sudden you see, this rock's in my way. And now I know what I need to do in order to get past it.
Right. I actually was thinking, I hope I wasn't confusing here. I said at the beginning that people should put things front and center. It's really important. And then I described these two things where I put a piece of paper away and didn't see it and finally read it. And then this.
You put it down though. I'm like, you got it out in front of you.
I just want people to know that these themes that I was putting down in the poem for you and this piece of paper, I was writing in other places. I was being consistent. I was writing those things down. I was reviewing my 10-year letter. I was thinking back, and every time you and I would have an interaction that maybe wasn't as great as it could be, I was always thinking in my head, like, how do I continue to make you feel safe? What else can I do?
Right.
And a lot of that led to, like, I didn't know the path. Sometimes it's really nice if you say, well, I want to be a safe man, so I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and you know exactly what those are. But this process is not that clear. But having the vision helps as you move through something. You go, man, why am I so angry every time she says, can you peel the potatoes? Like, why is that hitting me that way? And so then, as opposed to just being like, I wish she'd stop asking me to peel the potatoes, right? So there's a different way to process through that. I'm
confused about that example. Now I'm stuck on what does the peeling the potatoes represent, Patrick?
So I don't know what it represents.
Can you give me a different example? Because my brain just got stuck on that.
Did you?
Wait, yeah.
Did you need me to clarify?
No, literally, can you clarify?
Okay. So my point is, the first side is I said, why do I get mad when she asked me to peel the potatoes? I'm going on a journey. I'm saying I need to figure out why this is showing up this way versus I wish she would just stop asking me to peel
versus like an
potato.
Outburst.
Right.
I see.
Yeah,
you're getting curious about why the emotion is there versus expressing it in a healthy or unhealthy way. Just getting, usually an unhealthy way.
Right.
Because it's not processed.
Exactly.
Okay, I gotcha. Potatoes represent repressed emotion.
I think part of it's because we're on this low carb diet. I bring up potatoes, and you like, we need potatoes. Send potatoes, listeners.
Oh my gosh. Okay, moving on. Anything else you wanted to talk about? Potatoes, maybe
French fries,
pizza. Oh dear. Okay, so we thought that we would maybe share some. Well, I'll start by asking you. So I was going to say we were going to share some questions just to guide, to prompt, to get you started. But these are not end all be all. If you have, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. You can think in columns, right? You can think about spirituality, and then I'm going to think through, what do I want to improve in my spirituality? Relationship, what do I want to improve in my relationship? Self-reflection, what do I want to improve in myself, in my character, in my wounds, and my, like, what's there to kind of work on? What's my healing journey look like this year? You can kind of do it in categories like that when you're thinking through goals and visions and things like that. But you can also start with just like this broader vision of, like, again, where is that end goal? Who is that person that I want to become? And so thinking about, your journey and everything that we've been through, do you have any, were there any questions that helped you, or was it like, how did you do it? Like, what was it, just sort of the big vision? Like what was your process, or was there a process, or did it change?
So,
because I think it totally can change.
It did. I mean, I was introduced to the 10-year letter that was just essentially write a letter from you 10 years in the future to yourself today. And there wasn't a lot of guidelines. It's like, what would you say to yourself, today as you're going through this really hard time? And so I think that helped me, start to think in that way. And then I think what also helped me, from the addict side was what conditions had I created because of my addiction. I had created a loss of trust. I had created a lack of safety. I had created broken relational intimacy. I had done all of these things. So what are the words that I can use to reestablish that in the safest way possible? And so those were the types of things. It was easy for me to see what I had done and what the cause of it was. I think I relatively understood that fairly quickly. And then, so thinking of the antithesis of that. So, if you think about it, sometimes people, they're unhealthy, so they want to be healthy. That's a vision.
And then, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, defining what that means.
Right. Yeah.
What does healthy mean? And that's sometimes where, like, I'm not trying to be vague here, because some people have a very specific idea of what healthy means. If you don't, maybe because healthy hasn't been demonstrated, a lot of times we haven't seen healthy relationships communicated, whether it be like, we don't talk about sex and relationships in church. So we don't see, we don't get education around what that actually looks like. We just get the don't, bad messages, right? Or sometimes we're raised in families that, that our parents maybe stayed together but didn't have the healthiest way of communicating, right? So there's a lot of ways that we could have gotten to this point, not actually knowing, or let me say, not actually experiencing what healthy relationship is. And so if that's you and you're thinking, well, yeah, I want healthy, but like, what does that mean? I think it is really helpful to be working with a coach or practitioner, talking to your group, thinking about, asking those questions, talking it through with somebody who can kind of help you think about, well, let's talk about healthy communication and what that looks like. And let me give you some examples. What does healthy disagreement, what does healthy conflict, what does healthy rupture and repair, like what does that look like? And how do you kind of get clear on those things and define those and kind of help you create a picture for that, an idea of what that looks like, maybe very specific to some of the pain points that you have in your life. So working with people, reading books about those types of things. Although I will put a little asterisk there. Sometimes I think there's a lot of books around relationships and things that can be really good, and there's also a lot that can be really bad. And as Christians, I have to say it, the faith community has put out a lot of really horrible marriage and relationship books, and that's because they're not based in good information. I don't know how else to say that. It's a terrible. Anyway,
books are bad.
Books are bad. Burn the books. No, that was sorry. I'm trying to process how to communicate this succinctly. It's a tangent that's not appropriate for this episode.
Yeah.
But.
Well, I think maybe I can help you here. So our experience and what we've helped with people heal is this whole notion of safety and not being abused, whether mentally or whatever. And unfortunately, there's been some twisted views coming out of the evangelical community that kind of in some ways condones continued abuse, and
toxic relational patterns. There you go. Thank you for making that clear.
You're welcome. I pay attention.
Moving on. Okay. Yeah. So just be careful is what I'm saying. Yeah. But the point that I started with, and I will now get back to, is make it there, Kylene. Brain, come back.
Come on.
You can do it. Is that you look outside of yourself. If defining those things is hard, look for resources and support and people, and maybe look for like examples of people that are living out something that looks healthy to you. Right. Yeah. Something that, and the people that are writing the books, or the people that are, or the people that you're gathering, that are mentoring you, right? Like, what does their relationship really look like? Because sometimes, just because people are this is something I've really found, just because people have been married a really long time doesn't always equal them knowing what a healthy relationship looks like.
That's right. Yeah. They've certainly been through things.
Yeah.
You can give them that.
Yeah.
But there's
a lot of, tolerating each other sometimes that you'll see. And sometimes it's like they put more emphasis on the years married than the depth of the connection in the relationship. And so, just you guys know what to look for. We're like 165 episodes in now. You know what we're talking about. You know, emotional connection. You know what we're talking about. So to that point, if you are thinking, how do you Patrick mentioned the 10-year letter. If you're thinking, how in the world do I think about like future me? There is a meditation that I recorded very early on in the podcast. It's episode, I guess it's 12.5, but it doesn't actually have a number. So we have episode 12, we have episode 13. This is the episode in between that doesn't have a number associated with it. It's called Best Version of You Meditation. So if you scroll all the way back down to season 1 and go to Best Version of You Meditation right after episode 12, I'm actually guiding you through a visualization of like the higher version, the future version of you that's accomplished these things. And you're connecting to that version of yourself and then going like, what is the lived experience here? What is life like here? Who are the people that I'm around here? What is the behavior that I'm engaging in here? So that might help you if this idea sounds kind of hard. You might start there and sort of connect to that part of yourself, that future you, that higher self, that healed version of you. And that's just a tool that you can use through this process. So that does exist. So check that out. Okay, so 10-year letter, best version of you meditation. Here are some questions that maybe can help you as you're continuing to create the vision. One is just, what kind of a person do I want to be? And we mentioned, the idea of healthy relationships, healthy from, you might say free of addiction. Well, again, get specific, right? Like, what is a life that is free of addiction and that is living in freedom and recovery? What does that feel like? What does that look like? What is, specific about that person versus, past you. And, you might want to get free from the trauma of the betrayal that you're experiencing. What does that look like relationally, individually? What does your life look like when you have processed that? What does processing that look like? What are the, so start with the goal of, I would like to be free from the trauma. I would like to move into a place where that's not ruling my mind anymore and ruling my life anymore. And then you can kind of look back and go, okay, well, what's getting in the way of that? Well, right now I feel like I am in the trauma. Right now I feel like I am having a lot of triggers. Right now I feel like I have a lot of memories. And those are the barriers in the way of the vision. And then you can answer the question, what are the tools and resources that I need to, I need to talk to somebody that can help me process my triggers. I need for my partner to respect this boundary so I can establish some safety, which will also help me calm my triggers, right? So you can start thinking through backwards thinking from the big vision.
I think too, sometimes if you listen to the way you've described yourself, so people are really hard on themselves. I've squandered so many opportunities. Flip that. I'm going to be somebody that creates opportunities for me, or I have, I've spent, I've made it to my 30s and I'm so out of shape. Okay, in the next 10 years, I'm going to really get myself back into shape. Like, you know what I mean? So sometimes that it could be the antithesis of what you're saying to yourself.
Yeah, but so another way maybe to even think about, I love that you're saying specifically the wording. The wording is so important, right? Flipping it. And also what stories about yourself can you work through, change, or release? So what are another way to think about it is that what are the negative beliefs I have about myself or the negative way I talk about myself? Betrayed partners have a lot of beliefs around worthiness, about value, about, all these things. So do addicts, right? Those tend to be, they are different paths, but they're the same belief, right? I'm not worthy enough. I'm not good enough. I can't, right? Think about spending some time identifying I can't, I won't, I'm not statements that you subconsciously have running in the background, because those are going to be things that you're going to want to identify and bring into your awareness so that you can work with someone to change those. And the first step is becoming aware that we're saying that to ourselves. And so if we can become aware. So just identifying when you're creating a vision, like what are the stories that I want to change? What are the things that I want to release this year? Another one is, how do I want to treat people? I think you've mentioned that.
Yeah, somebody asked me, well, how do you respond to your wife, your spouse when they're angry or whatever? And this came to mind for me. I was like, always lead with kindness. Always lead with kindness. And so like if that's such a great life thing to do, is if you can always lead with kindness. You know what I mean? And it just means there's a lot of things that are super hard, and a lot of things that might make you angry. But if your responses are always, and you may not always get it right, but if you're pursuing kindness, if you don't get it right, then you'll repair with kindness. And so I just really think that if you can always lead with kindness, that to me, that's like the number one thing. And then beyond that, you start to say, okay, how do I establish patterns that are safe? How do I?
Yeah. And I think, again, sort of like exactly what you're just saying, establishing patterns. So if you say, I want to lead with kindness, break that down into the parts of your life and think, okay, how do I interact with my partner? Do I react in anger? Okay, well, how can I react in kindness? Like start breaking it down in specific, think about, and sometimes it's easier to go, okay, this is what I want to do in the future. Let me turn around over the past 2 weeks or the last month and look, how has this not happened? To give myself specific examples of where I'm going to need to exercise and practice this in the future. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So that's just like anything. If we want to accomplish it, it's going to be good to turn around and go, where have I struggled with this? Right? Yeah. If I know my, if I know that my patterns with exercise are a specific way historically, and I want to change that, I'm going to need to know what the patterns are. I'm going to need to know, if it's because I'm tired in the morning and do I need to shift my exercise into the evening, right? Or what does that look like if I'm not okay with what it's been? Right.
Right.
And we briefly talked about this as well, but what fears or insecurities hold me back from feeling free? So I think, we talked about defining health, getting really clear on that. Define what free is, right? It's because freedom is really where relationships are going to thrive. Anytime we feel pressured or coerced or anything from the other person or even internally where there's pressure, right? That's going to not feel free. And freedom is really where health resides. Yeah. So if we are feeling like we don't know that, I've never experienced that, I can't relate to that word, right? Spend some time thinking about that. What does that feel like? What would that look like? How would a relationship that lives in freedom manifest, right?
Well, you did this. I think Aslan was a character that came into your therapy. But like, even if there's an example in your life that sometimes it's hard to define freedom, but maybe there's a fictional example or a historical example or a family example of somebody that you have determined is free or has all the behavior, like, gosh, my Uncle Larry was such a nice guy. He smiled all the time. He came every time he was asked or it was needed. You know what I mean? Like you can start to, you can use some examples that of people in your life. And sometimes, because that becomes a limbic thing, right? Yeah. You can kind of go, hey, I know Uncle Larry and Uncle Larry's very safe to me. So when I think about being a safe person, I'm going to envision Uncle Larry and it maybe gives you a little bit of a dopamine hit as well.
Yeah, and I think knowing, when you're thinking about freedom, I think within freedom always resides choice, right? I think when you know that you have a choice, that is a key to knowing, I have freedom here, right? So I have a choice to leave.
Right.
I know that I can. I know that I'm capable. I know that I have that as an option. I know that I can choose anything, really. I'm thinking about our relationship. I was like, I can choose to do anything I want. Now,
I do what I want.
I can. Like, I have absolute...
I can spend thousands of dollars on Lego kits.
Yes, you could. And then you would experience relational consequences. Just kidding.
Well, that doesn't sound fun.
No, I'm trying to think of some specific examples here because I'm like, technically, I could do anything I want. Now, things come with consequences.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So there are reasons that I would choose not to do certain things one way or another. And there are reasons that you would choose not to do things one way or another. But there's freedom in the sense that you, Patrick, are not controlling anything about my life.
Right.
You're not controlling how I think. You're not controlling how I feel. You're not controlling if, I go to the grocery store, right? There's absolute complete freedom. If I wanted to go have lunch with a friend of mine, I would never think twice about asking, right? So there's total freedom there. So if that's something to think about, like, what does freedom in a relationship feel like? I know that I could wake up tomorrow and say I want a divorce. That is freedom. Yeah. Because then I know, and when we have talked about that is how free you are. You could wake up tomorrow and say, goodbye, I'm done. That we know when we don't do that we're choosing to be in the relationship.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So just thinking through, like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What is getting in the way of that right now? All those sorts of questions. I think when I say defining, I don't necessarily mean like writing a definition on a piece of paper, right? Yeah. Sometimes it is a visual concept in your mind or a feeling that you're like, let me understand what this means internally. Yeah. We've talked about that in terms of like the sexual intimacy, where I sort of had an idea of like what that meant, but it actually took me learning from, I listened to a podcast, I read a book and they were talking about emotional intimacy and physical connection, and it, being possible to be like a spiritual connection and a spiritual experience, and sort of creating a different idea in my mind of what was actually possible and creating a little more definition for me within that. So then I was like, well, that's kind of where I want to go. If, we're going to make it through something really hard, that sounds like that might be worth it if we could create something like that, right? Yeah. So that's what I mean about if something feels unfamiliar, or, hey, that word sounds good, but it doesn't resonate with something that I have experience with, maybe dig into that a little bit. Maybe talk to your coach or your therapist or whoever you're working with, and kind of the things that we're confused about, the things that we're afraid of, the things that we're, are the unknown. These are all the things that we want to start asking questions about.
Yeah.
Anything else around questions that you can think about?
No.
Okay. Well, I have one more exercise that we will leave people with, and that is, you said the 10-year letter, and that is the version of you in recovery 10 years from now, writing to current you, saying, this is what life is now that I am in recovery. So that's one exercise. Another one would be to go back to the best version of you meditation and connect to that healed future version of you. That's another way to do that. And then another exercise, these are all really similar, but just different variations on a theme. Another is to write a letter as if you are 80 years old today, reflecting on your life and your choices and what got you there and who you are today. And then I want you to go and do the exact same thing as if you are the 70-year-old, and kind of backtracking to the 70-year-old, what got you there, what kind of helped you, and how are you feeling, and what's your life like, and who are your friends like, and then go back to when you were 60 and write another letter and kind of keep going. And then the closer it gets to your age, you might break it down like in the last decade by like 5 years or so, but basically decade by decade by decade back to your age today, and then write a letter at your age today, right? Yeah. And then you're going to be able to look at those and go, what helped me get to 80? Like, what's her life like? What is she doing? Who is she hanging out with? And then what was her life like at 70? What was her life like at 60? And it's just another way to kind of get your brain thinking about this future version of you and what's going to help you get there. And I know sometimes even just thinking about the older version of me helps me, like, if I don't know, like, I think I'm aware, I don't know, I think of things maybe in weird ways, but I've thought about that term in light of eternity, right? Like, is this going to matter when I'm 80? Is this going to matter when I'm in heaven? Is this going to, so I think sometimes thinking decades in advance, or even in eternal themes, if you have those belief systems, can be helpful. And help us think through these types of things that we're talking about, creating a vision of your life, who you want to be, what kind of a character do you want to develop, Who do you want to have as friends? What do those friendships look like? What kind of a relationship do you want to have? What's the definition of that?
Right.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share about creating
No,
vision?
I think
other than you can do it.
There's actually a really good book by Andy Stanley called Visioneering as well. And it can be somewhat of a nebulous concept because I think sometimes we want finite, we want definition, and casting a vision can be a little bit fuzzy. And so I think you have to understand that going into it. But seek out resources and really take the time to sit down and do it. It's a really, really important part of your healing process.
Yes, and we are so thankful that you are here. We are so thankful that we are wrapping our 3rd season, and soon we will be starting season 4, which is super exciting. Mm-hmm. I think that. Do we start? I'll have to see when we've rolled our seasons, if it's at the beginning of the year.
Wasn't it in the summer?
I think it might be the recovery anniversary. But I'm not sure. I'll check. It's coming. Yeah. Either way. Yeah. Anyway, we're so thankful that we are wrapping up 2025 with you. Thank you so much for being here. And if this episode or this podcast has helped you in any way, if it's supported you, if it's encouraged you, please pause and take a moment to leave a review. It would be a huge end of year gift to us, and we would really, really appreciate it. Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we will see you next year. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.